On this show, we compare the best parts of our childhoods and argue which decade was better, the 80s or the 90s.
In this episode, we'll be discussing which decade had the best Saturday morning cartoon, history of 1988 versus 1998, and if the 1980s bike fad, the BMX, would fly today.
Which decade was better? You can help us decide.
So stick around for this episode of 10 Years Apart.
We're going back, way back. It's the 10 Years Apart podcast
80s versus 90s.
with Adam and Scott.
Welcome to the 10 Years Apart podcast. I'm Scott, one of the hosts, and I'm joined by my co-host Adam. Adam, how's it going?
It's going very well, thank you.
So this podcast is all about comparing our childhoods. My childhood was growing up during the 80s and Adam the 90s, making us 10 years apart.
In this episode, we are going to be comparing which decade we thought had the best Saturday morning cartoon as a child.
I'll pick my favorite cartoon from the 1980s and Adam will pick his from the 1990s.
Then we'll debate on which Saturday morning cartoon was the best, and you can also vote which cartoon was your favorite from those decades.
You can vote right here if you're watching us on YouTube by clicking on the poll in the top right corner. Or you can vote on any of our social media at 10 Years Apart Pod, or by visiting our website at 10yearsapart.com.
After we get through our debate on the best Saturday morning cartoon, we'll also have our segment which we call Does It Fly Today?, where we look at a movie, song, or a product from either the 1980s or 1990s and discuss why we think it faded away and if we think it would hold up today.
On this episode, we'll be looking back at a 1980s bike fad, the BMX, and asking, would that fly today?
That will be a little later, so stick around for that too. And before we get into our best Saturday morning cartoon debate, we're going to start off with the segment which we call A Year from Our Past.
A year from our past.
In A Year from Our Past, we'll be doing a brief history look back at a year from each decade and what we remember from those years.
So Scott will be looking back at 1988, and I'll be covering 1998.
I'll get us started with 1988 movies. Some popular movies from 1988 were The Naked Gun, Die Hard, Coming to America, They Live, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Red Heat, Child's Play, Cocktail, The Last Temptation of Christ, Rain Man, Willow, Beetlejuice, Big, and Young Guns. The Oscar for the Best Picture in 1988 was Rain Man, and the highest grossing movie worldwide in 1988 was also Rain Man, with $413 million.
Some popular movies from 1998 were Saving Private Ryan, Deep Impact, Shakespeare in Love, The Truman Show, A Bug's Life, The Big Lebowski, Rushmore, There's Something About Mary, The Thin Red Line, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Mulan, American History X, and Armageddon. The movie that walked away with the Best Picture Oscar in 1998 was Shakespeare in Love. And the highest grossing movie from that year was Armageddon, with a worldwide gross of $554 million.
So as far as the best pictures go, 1988's Rain Man and 1998's Shakespeare in Love, they're actually both movies that I like. I'm not too sure which movie I would say was better. Which one do you think's better?
I'd have to say Rain Man. I don't really care for Shakespeare in Love. I thought it was kind of boring.
So some of the 1988 movies, obviously like Die Hard is a classic and almost kind of changed the way action movies were done from then on. Red Heat is a movie some people might not know of. It was a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that I really liked. It's one of his lower key ones, let's say.
I haven't seen that one.
He plays like a Russian undercover cop or KGB guy.
How's his accent?
Fine for a Russian. The Last Temptation of Christ, I remember a lot of controversy with that movie, but I don't really remember the movie that much. Don't think I found it that interesting.
That's Willem Dafoe, right? He plays Jesus?
Yeah. Can't remember who the director was. Was it Oliver Stone?
I think it was Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, it might have been. Big was a movie I really liked for a Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. I like the part where they dance on the piano keys in that big toy store.
Yeah, it's a classic scene. For horror movies, Child's Play is very popular, but it wasn't a movie I really liked. I didn't find it that entertaining or scary, for that matter.
Did you see the recent reboot?
No, did you?
Yeah, it wasn't that good.
And comedies, Naked Gun and Coming to America were both movies I liked. Naked Gun was kind of that slapstick humor, like Airplane and a lot of other
Yeah,
Leslie Nielsen films.
yeah, I really love the Naked Gun trilogy. I think they're all pretty funny.
Yeah. And one of my favorite westerns was actually Young Guns, and I still enjoy that movie today. So
That's about Billy and the Kid, or Billy the Kid.
I think it was, yeah, and
Yeah,
that was Emilio Estefan. Was that his name?
right. Emilio Estevez. Yeah,
It was, yeah, just a lot of the popular actors at that time got together and made a typical western movie. Some of the 1998 movies, Deep Impact. That was a movie that I did enjoy. Actually, I kind of like it more than Armageddon. I think they
hmm
came out around the same time, probably the same year.
yeah. It was the same year because Armageddon's on this list too.
Armageddon was fun, but I liked Deep Impact a little more because it seemed a little
hmm
more serious, I guess.
Yeah,
The Truman Show was a movie I really enjoyed. That was Jim Carrey. I think it was one of the first roles that I saw him in that wasn't slapstick comedy.
yeah. It wasn't really over the top, like him acting like a goofball.
It had comedy in it, but it was more of a drama.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah. Something to Do About Mary. That was a really good comedy for that year.
Yep. Yeah, I love that movie. Yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of the movies on the 1998 list. Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that opening, the D-Day landing. It's pretty brutal, but really captures your attention. And I think the last battle in the movie is also quite good. Truman Show's classic. I really love The Big Lebowski. A lot of people don't like it very much, but it does have this kind of cult status. Rushmore is pretty decent. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's kind of a strange film to watch, but Johnny Depp's performance is really good, as well as Benicio del Toro. And yeah, at that time, I really liked American History X. I thought Armageddon was kind of dumb, but yeah, I like most of these from the 1998 list. And for the 1988 list, yeah, I really love The Naked Gun. Die Hard is one of the best action movies ever made, in my opinion. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I loved that as a kid. I thought it was really cool how they managed to put like cartoons in a live action feature, and it looked real. I've never seen the Last Temptation of Christ, but I do like Martin Scorsese movies. Beetlejuice is one of Tim Burton's best movies, and yeah, I also enjoyed Big.
Some hit songs from 1988. We had Bobby McFerrin with Don't Worry, Be Happy. Poison, Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Robert Palmer with Simply Irresistible. David Lee Roth, Just Like Paradise. Tracy Chapman with Fast Car. Living Color with The Cult of Personality. Van Halen, When It's Love. Cheap Trick, The Flame. Bon Jovi, Bad Medicine. U2 with Desire. And Metallica with One. The song of the year was from Chicago called Look Away. And the best song for the Grammy in 1988 was Bobby McFerrin with Don't Worry, Be Happy.
And some hit music from 1998. We have Aerosmith, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. The Bare Naked Ladies, One Week. Britney Spears with One More Time. Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life. The Beastie Boys, Intergalactic. Lenny Kravitz's Fly Away. Rob Zombie's Dragula. Jimmy Ray's Are You Jimmy Ray? And Semisonic's song Closing Time. Song of the year, according to the Billboard Top 100, was Too Close by Next. And the song that walked away with the Grammy for Best Song was My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion.
As far as the music goes, the 1998 Grammy, Celine Dion, and 1988's Don't Worry, Be Happy. I think I like the Don't Worry, Be Happy more.
Yeah, it's a little more uplifting.
I mean, both of them are not really my genre of music, but between the two, I mean, they're both good songs in different ways, I guess.
There was a rumor going around on the internet that Bobby McFerrin guy, that he actually like blew his brains out, but then I found out it was completely false. I think people just made it up to make it sound like
Yeah.
kind of ironic.
The 1998 music, some of it I know, some of it I don't. I like Rob Zombie. Was really into White Zombie before he went solo.
Hmm.
But that was a song that's really easy to bob your head to.
Dragula.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it a lot in high school.
Yeah, I think it was in the movie The Matrix. So it was
Okay.
part of that soundtrack originally.
Yeah.
The Lenny Kravitz album I really liked. I'm pretty sure Fly Away was an okay song, but there was other songs on that I really liked on that album.
Hmm.
Beastie Boys, Intergalactic, I know that song. I don't know too much of the more modern Beastie Boys songs. I liked them back in the 80s. Bare Naked Ladies, that was a Canadian band that was, pretty popular worldwide.
Do you remember this song in particular, One Week? It's where
Yeah.
the lyrics are like super fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember the song. This is a decent song.
Yeah, I just remember, like, I think I was just starting high school, like grade 9, and that song was, you could hear it everywhere.
And the Aerosmith song, Don't Want to Miss a Thing, I think that was probably from Armageddon, or one of the songs in Armageddon that came out that year. It's interesting how Aerosmith usually seems to be relevant in quite a few decades, like both the 80s and 90s, but even the 70s, and not sure about the 2000s, but Aerosmith has been around for a long time.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, 70s, they had that song Dream On. Then they had a lot of hits in the 80s and, yeah, early 90s. So I think those 3 decades, they were pretty
A long-lasting band.
Yeah.
From the 88 songs, Poison was a band I was into, the old hair metal, glam, rock, whatever you want to call it. But they're a band I've seen multiple times in concert, and looking back at it, questionable, but it was a band I was really into at the time.
Okay.
Tracy Chapman's Fast Car, that was a song I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I still like that song.
Van Halen came out with that album. I think it might have been the first album without David Lee Roth, so it was like with Sammy Hagar. David Lee Roth went solo that year, and Van Halen came out with the new singer. Metallica, in the late 80s, that's when I really got into Metallica, and Justice for All was probably the first album of theirs that I started listening to them. And One was quite a big song that came off that album.
That's the one with like the machine gun fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the 1988 music, I was quite young, so I do remember some of these songs. So the Don't Worry, Be Happy, I remember from the Big Billy Bass, those things you'd see in people's garages with the plastic fish, and you'd hit a button and it would start moving, and usually it sang that song, Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Tracy Chapman, Fast Car, and that other hit she had, like Give Me One Reason.
Yeah,
I think she's really talented. I think she...
that was
she
in
had a
in a previous year or episode, right? I think in the 90s.
Yeah, I think she may have been in the last episode.
So she was around the late 80s, early 90s, I guess.
Right. For the 1988 music, I mean, I grew to appreciate Metallica a lot later.
Yeah.
And from 1998 music, I remember a lot of these just because I was starting high school at the time. Yeah, a lot of these stick out for me. I remember I Don't Want to Miss a Thing being played at like a school dance where everyone was kind of like high and nervous and, going through puberty and stuff like that. Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z, that was really great for me at the time. Yeah, and the Beastie Boys song Intergalactic, you see that a lot in movies, like as like a build-up song to like the final, battle or something between two opposing forces. Lenny Kravitz, yeah, I agree with you that Fly Away is a good song. Rob Zombie's pretty cool. I like that Dragula song. It's got like that heavy metal guitar in it. And Semisonic, Closing Time, that's one of those songs where you always used to hear at the bar. It's like they put it on just as like people like, yeah, it's time to finish your drinks and get the hell out of here kind of thing. Yeah, both decades had good music.
And in some TV news and other events from 1988, TV, we had the Wonder Years debut, which debuted on January 31st, and made the old Beatles song, With a Little Help from My Friends, sung by Joe Cocker, quite mainstream and famous. And Roseanne debuted on October 18th on ABC. A popular toy that was released in 1988 was Baby Grows, which was basically a doll that you could like hit a switch, and over time it kind of grew in size and went from a baby to like a 4-year-old. Obviously something that neither of us had, but I think it was a popular toy back then. Some technical breakthroughs from 1988. We had the antidepressant drug Prozac, which was introduced to the market. The first major computer virus infected computers connected to the internet in 1988. And the U.S. stealth bomber was unveiled from the U.S. Some popular news and events from 1988. We had the Winter Olympic Games that were held in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. The drug crack first appeared on the streets in the US around 1988. And Ben Johnson won the 100-meter gold at the Seoul Olympics, but then was disqualified for taking steroids.
And some TV events from 1998. We had BBC Worldwide debuting BBC America for the first time. Long-running British children's television series Teletubbies begins its U.S. television debut on PBS Kids. 76.3 million people tune into the finale of Seinfeld on NBC. Actor and comedian Phil Hartman is shot and killed by his wife. In front of a nationwide audience watching on Fox, Mark McGwire hits his 62nd home run of the Major League Baseball season, breaking the 37-year-old record held by Roger Maris. Popular toy releases from this year, we had Furby. And technical breakthroughs include evidence of frozen water discovered on the moon's surface. Zarya, the first module of the International Space Station, is launched. Apple releases the iMac. The Food and Drug Administration approves Viagra for use as a treatment for erectile dysfunction, the first pill to be approved for this condition in the United States. And the world's first medically successful hand transplantation carried out by a team of surgeons in France. And some big news events for 1998. We have Europeans agreeing on a single currency, the euro. U.S. President Bill Clinton is accused in a White House sex scandal. He denies allegations of an affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The Unabomber is sentenced to 4 life terms. And Matthew Shepard, a gay Wyoming student, is fatally beaten in a hate crime.
All right, so from 1998, I definitely remember the whole Bill Clinton scandal and the Monica Lewinsky thing and the whole jizz on the dress or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Cigar in the snatch.
Yeah, I don't remember that actually. I remember a cigar being involved, but I guess looking back at it, you would assume that's what it was for.
Mm-hmm.
Viagra, obviously I've heard of that. Never had to use it, but maybe I will someday. Someday soon, probably. And television, the whole Seinfeld thing. I like Seinfeld. I'm not a huge, super fan or nothing. Like, I didn't go out of my way to watch every episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like the show. I don't know if I saw the finale. I'm sure I did, but I don't remember it.
It's, a lot of people were disappointed by it.
As far as 1988, even though I was a lot younger then, I really remember the Winter Olympics in Calgary and seeing that on TV all the time, just because it was quite the big thing, living in Canada when I was young. And, everybody wearing like these cowboy hats. And I also remember a big thing was pin trading. I'm sure it is at every Olympics still, but I remember seeing a lot of things on, people that travel the world to go to Olympic events and having pins to trade from various countries and stuff. And I was in high school at that time, in 1988, and I remember watching the Ben Johnson race. It was on at nighttime, and I remember watching that and being so happy that he won, and of course finding out later on that he was busted for using steroids and had the gold medal taken back.
Yeah, he was Canadian too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember like a decade later at some point, like another Canadian, Donovan Bailey. He won
Bailey,
the 100 meter or something like that.
Yeah. And Mark McGwire in the 1998, obviously I remember him because a lot of people used to say I looked like him, especially when I first moved to Korea. A lot of Koreans actually thought I was him when I went to a baseball game.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how he got busted for steroids or some type of, no, I think it was steroids, but he got busted for steroids too.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Just like Ben Johnson did in 88. So again, 10 years apart and a couple of famous athletes getting busted for the same thing.
Yeah, people still juicing.
Yeah.
All right. And for 1988, I remember the Wonder Years. I remember this iconic song that started the show. I ended up seeing Joe Cocker years later. He was opening for the Guess Who when I saw them perform in Toronto. And I remember him singing that song. And yeah, even like as an old man, he really belted it out. I don't remember Baby Grows at all, but I think it's a pretty cool idea for a toy. Prozac, yeah, I remember hearing about that. Stealth bombers, I remember seeing in like movies like in the 90s. Like, what was that one with John Travolta and Christian Slater, Broken Arrow?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was 4 years old when these news events came out, so I'm not familiar with any of them until later on hearing about them. Yeah, the TV events for 1998. I remember seeing the Seinfeld finale, and people thought it was kind of a disappointment because all they did was just kind of bring in old characters and like rehash like old plot lines and stuff like that, which I think was a pretty clever idea. But yeah, it wasn't that funny. You'd think they'd have like a much funnier finale to such a great series. I was a big fan of Phil Hartman. You know, he was on SNL, and then he did a lot of voices on The Simpsons. So, and you know, he was in a few films as well. Like a very tragic death for that guy.
He was on news radio.
Yeah, he was on news radio too. That's right. I don't remember the Furby. And for the technical breakthroughs, I think Viagra sticks out just because there were so many, you know, late night talk show hosts making jokes about it.
Yeah, sticks out literally.
And don't remember the hand transplant. I think the biggest news event here is the Bill Clinton thing. It was all over the news, at least in Canada and the US. People couldn't stop talking about it. And again, late night talk show hosts just ate this story up. They'd have like one-liners for every monologue they had, like opening their shows. The Unabomber thing is, yeah, I wasn't too familiar until they made like a mini series about that guy a couple years ago, which I liked. I think it was called Manhunt or something like that. And yeah, that's about it for me.
Of course, there's a lot more music, movies, and news events from both 1988 and 1998, so feel free to let us know about your favorites and your memories from these specific years in the comments below, wherever you find this podcast.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you regarding these years and get your feedback. Now let's move on to the main topic of this episode. It's time for Battle of the Decade.
3, 2, 1.
Battle of the Decade.
Fight.
I must break you.
So for the Battle of the Decade in this episode and our main topic, we'll be fighting it out on which decade had the best Saturday morning cartoon as a child.
Round 1. Let's fight.
Choose your fighter.
Some honorable mentions that I had from my childhood or from the 80s for Saturday morning cartoons. We had The Smurfs, which ran on NBC from 1981 to 89. Mask, which was on the USA Network from 85 to 86. Voltron, Defenders of the Universe, which was in syndication anyway from 84 and 85 in the US. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, again in syndication from 87 to 90, but started in the 80s on CBS. G.I. Joe from 85 and 86. Star Blazers started actually in 79, but I remember it always on in the early 80s. Black Star, which only had one season in 81. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe from 83 to 85. The Transformers from 84 to 87. And the top 3 runners-up for me, 3 was Thundercats from 85 to 89. Battle of the Planets, number 2, from 78 to 80. Was actually on in the early 80s, though, in Canada. And my number 1 runner-up was Thundar, the Barbarian, which was on for 2 seasons in 80 and 81. But my pick for the best Saturday morning cartoon, and the one I loved the most, was Dungeons and Dragons, which aired from 1983 to 85. Dungeons and Dragons is basically a group of friends that go on a D&D roller coaster ride and are magically transported into the D&D world, where they become the main characters. Like in the game, we had the Ranger, the Magician, the Cavalier, the Thief, the Barbarian, and the Acrobat, all trying to escape and get back home with the help of the Dungeon Master. And they're trying to be stopped by the main villain in the TV show, Venger. This series lasted for 27 episodes over 3 seasons and was produced by Marvel and aired on CBS every Saturday morning.
And some honorable mentions for Saturday morning cartoons from the 1990s include DuckTales, which had Scrooge McDuck and his 3 nephews getting into all kinds of different adventures. Men in Black, which was based on the 1994 film with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. Darkwing Duck, about a duck caped crusader. Ren and Stimpy, about a dog and a cat who had this strange relationship. Beetlejuice, based on the Tim Burton film. Tiny Toons, which was loosely based on Looney Tunes, but miniature versions like their kids. And the Magic School Bus, which was an educational program for young viewers, in which the bus would go into different areas. Like sometimes they'd go into a human body and they'd explore the function of the lungs or the liver or the kidneys or things like that. Very educational program. But my choice for the best Saturday morning cartoon from the 1990s was Animaniacs. Animaniacs is an American animated comedy television series created by Tom Ruegger for the Fox Broadcasting Company's Fox Kids block before moving to the WB in 1995. Animaniacs was like I said, animated feature. The central characters were Yakko, Wacko, and Dot. They got into many adventures and they did a lot of parody, a lot of singing. There's also some side segments like Pinky and the Brain, a story about two lab mice who try to take over the world each episode but fail miserably somehow. I chose this one because it made me laugh a lot as a kid, and I think even if I watch them to this day, they probably get me chuckling.
Round 2. Let's fight.
Tail of the tape.
Some of the reasons I picked Dungeons and Dragons as my favorite Saturday morning cartoon was I really loved the animation at that time, and it was the first cartoon I watched that wasn't really cartoon looking in terms of other cartoons like Smurfs and Q*bert and Pac-Man. It was actually like a real people cartoon as opposed to monsters or characters. It was the first series I remember watching that actually had a continuing storyline. So even though each episode had its own little story or task within the episode, the main plot or the main point was the kids trying to get back home, which I always wanted to see and hope for in every episode that I watched. The main characters were all different and diverse, and there was at least one of them you could relate to. It had a strong main villain and Venger, and he was really scary to me as a kid. Plus a lot of other great bad guys and monsters like the dragon Tiamat. I loved the character of Dungeon Master, his wisdom, or at least, he seemed wise as a kid, and the way he would give clues and riddles to the main characters that you had to try and solve with them. There was less episodes, but they were a lot more memorable that you really became involved in, and it actually had a beginning and an end to the series. So those are some of the reasons why I picked Dungeons and Dragons.
Some of the reasons why I chose Animaniacs for Battle of the Decade was it was a variety show that had these short skits featuring a large cast of characters. The show had no set format, and the majority of episodes were composed of 3 short mini-episodes, each one starting with a different set of characters and bridging segments. I thought these were all highly entertaining, really, really funny stuff. I think mostly I appreciated it because they had a lot of parody skits where they'd poke fun at classic movies or TV shows or things like that. The humor varied in type, ranging from parody to cartoon violence. And it was a successful show. It gathered both child and adult fans. The series received ratings higher than its competitors and won 8 Daytime Emmy Awards and 1 Peabody Award. So those are some of the reasons why I chose Animaniacs.
Round 3. Let's fight.
Counterattack.
I remember the cartoon Animaniacs. I was older and already into my 20s when that aired. I thought it was different, and even though I wasn't into cartoons as much at that time, I enjoyed the fact that it was made for both kind of kids and adults in some way. I remember hearing about that cartoon, and I was intrigued because I heard Steven Spielberg was attached to the series. I don't know if you mentioned that, but I think he was the creator of the show or something. Anyways, through Spielberg. Maybe it was originally, what was his company? Dream something.
DreamWorks.
Maybe it started with DreamWorks. I kind of liked the way it was more like short skits, and you didn't really need a long attention span to watch it. It was almost like a Saturday Night Live for kids type thing. I enjoyed the characters. Pinky and the Brain, became quite popular, but I really liked Goodfeathers. I don't remember that show being on Saturday mornings, but I guess it was, or maybe originally it was. I kind of remember it being on weekdays after school time, after high school or whatever I was in at the time. And Animaniacs was fun. I'm surprised You missed quite a few cartoons that I actually did like from the 90s. I didn't see Gargoyles on your list, which was my favorite from the 90s. But Animaniacs, every episode seemed, so random. So I didn't find it as rememberable in terms of episodes and stuff. There are little skits and stuff that I kind of remember in terms of, things. I remember the actual Animaniacs doing a lot of musical things. One of them, I think they sang all the countries in the world into a song, which, was kind of entertaining. But they're all like 2 or 3 minute little sketches. So they just weren't as memorable to me as, say, the cartoon Dungeons and Dragons was.
And some of my thoughts on Dungeons and Dragons, I have to tell you, I didn't even know this was a Saturday morning cartoon. Then again, I was quite young at the time, so I probably wasn't watching a lot of cartoons yet. Yeah, I haven't even heard of this. Obviously I know I'm familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, the game, and how it's like a board game and now like a computer online game. But yeah, looking at the storyline, I mean, it looks kind of fun for kids. I don't know if I would have liked it myself. I think Animaniacs, the reason why I appreciated it so much was just because it was just so funny. Like all the parodies had me laughing a lot. I remember even my parents walking in the room and catching a glimpse of it, and they'd start laughing too because of the old throwback references to like films like the 70s movies. Yeah, I think Animaniacs, I would appreciate it more just because it was just very humorous. But I can't really comment too much on D&D because I've never seen it.
Round 4. Let's fight.
Final round.
Finally, once again, why I picked Dungeons and Dragons as the best Saturday morning cartoon. I thought it was a full series and story over 3 seasons with a beginning and an end to the story, which was unlike a lot of cartoons that you saw that were either just canceled or just ended. So it actually finished accomplishing the goal of the story, spoiler alert, and wasn't just a series that ended or was canceled. So it seemed like it was planned out from the get-go. It had strong characters that you both loved and hated, including one of the best villains in Venger. It was the first weekly story drama in ways that I ever got involved in, where you kind of look forward to every Saturday morning to see the next episode. Every episode had a goal to reach and help get to the final destination. It had that weekly build-up, not like, binging today, let's say, or cartoons today that are just episodic. And it was more like Game of Thrones was for adults, in the modern day today, but this was for kids. It's a cartoon I remember the most from my childhood and what got me up early to watch on Saturday mornings. And it's a cartoon I really enjoyed and I could still watch today.
And some final thoughts on Animaniacs. I just have to say the musical aspect of this TV show was phenomenal. It had a variety of music types. Many Animaniacs songs were parodies of classical or folk music with educational lyrics. The one you mentioned earlier, Yakko's World, in which Yakko sings the names of all 200 some nations of the world to the tune of the Mexican hat dance. You can find this song on YouTube. It's actually quite funny because he says them so quickly, and then there's also ones that are sped up versions. Yeah, they parody popular TV shows and movies and caricatured celebrities. Animaniacs made fun of celebrities, major motion pictures, television shows for adults like Seinfeld and Friends, among others. It made fun of television shows for kids and trends in the US overall. I can't stress enough how entertaining Animaniacs is, and I'd like them, if they brought it to something like Netflix nowadays, I'd probably binge watch. So those are some of the reasons why I chose Animaniacs. Remember, you can vote on which of these Saturday morning cartoons you thought was better in the poll in the above top right corner here on YouTube, or any of our social media at 10 Years Apart Pod or at our website, 10yearsapart.com.
And finally, on this episode of 10 Years Apart, we're going to look back at a 1980s bike fad that was known as the BMX. Could it make a comeback? Why did it fade away? It's time for Would That Fly Today?
Would that fly today?
The BMX bike, a bike that started in the mid-70s but was at the height of its popularity in the 1980s. Freestyling and doing tricks were the new thing on bikes. Adam, Do you remember the BMX?
I remember the BMX and kids at my school riding them. I never owned one myself, but I remember playing video games that involved BMX riding as an extreme sport where you can do various tricks on them. Yeah, I remember seeing some of the kids in my school riding them around. It never really appealed to me that much, but yeah, I remember them quite well. How about you, Scott? Do you remember the BMX?
They were the bikes to have when I was into my late childhood, probably like grades 7 and 8 or middle school, depending on where you're from. It was the only way of transportation at the time and how pretty much all the kids got around. We didn't have things like kids have today, like smartphones and the internet and computers and stuff like that. And I think kids played a lot more outside and met up with their friends more than maybe kids do today. I was really into the freestyle aspect of the BMX and doing and learning tricks and stuff. I remember all the accessories that you could get for the BMX, like the different paddings that you could put on, the top bar and on the handlebars and stuff, and different pegs so people could, stand up and hitch a ride on your back wheel. And I also remember all the different, colors that BMXs came in, from all the neon colors of the 80's, and even like I probably even had a pink BMX at one point. And I also remember the first bikes that you could really go off-road on. So yeah, BMX was a big part of my childhood. So Adam, why do you think the BMX faded away?
I'm not really sure if they have faded away. I think some kids probably still ride them like skateboards. But if I had to guess, if they declined in their popularity among kids, it might be, with the new advent of these things like hoverboards are really trendy nowadays, those things you can ride that are electronically powered. Yeah, BMX, maybe it's not really much of an extreme sport, at least the popular one these days. Not really sure why. I just know I haven't seen them around in quite a while. Scott, why do you think that the BMX faded away?
Kind of like you mentioned, I do remember in the early 90's, kind of like skateboards making a comeback, and a lot of kids got into the whole skateboard scene. I didn't, but a lot of my friends did. I think kids just grew out of them both literally and physically. It kind of looked weird when you saw like an adult riding on a BMX. I remember in late grade 8, possibly my first year in high school, the 10-speed bikes kind of were making a comeback too. More popular to have like gears on your bike and having like the thin tires and being more for street, racing and getting speed. And also, I think in the early 90's, mid 90's, mountain bikes, became the next big thing. And times have changed. Kids just don't go out as much, maybe. Maybe it's not as safe these days just to let your kids take off, and randomly cruise the streets on their bike. Plus, I remember a lot of BMXs getting stolen. I'm not saying I was involved in any of that activity, but I do remember I've had BMXs stolen from myself. And maybe because of that, they just became too expensive to replace. So, Adam, do you think BMXs could fly today?
I think they could probably fly today, but not to a wide audience. Like, I don't think they'd have this huge comeback. I remember, I think years after BMX, like razor scooters became a thing, and then those kind of dwindled out. And then in the past few years, we've seen things like I mentioned, like hoverboards gain in popularity, which I think will also fizzle out somehow. I think these ways of getting around will have their trends and fads over the years. I don't see BMX having a huge comeback, like I said, but yeah, I could still see kids having fun riding them. How about you, Scott? Do you think that BMXs could fly today?
I think they could fly today, and maybe they kind of do in a different kind of way, like you said. I'm sure they exist in maybe in some sport form or trick competitions, but they don't seem to be a common household bike anymore, and I don't think they'll ever make that kind of comeback. Again, jumping on a bike and randomly going places and meeting up with your friends to cruise all over the place is different these days, and maybe kids can't really do that. And the size of the bike or of the BMX makes them a little more geared towards a certain age range as opposed to other bikes. So I think they could make a comeback and still be around, but just not as popular as they were in the 80's.
Also, give us your feedback on the BMX bike in the comments below. You can also share with us your memories of the BMX on our social media at 10 Years Apart Pod or at our website 10yearsapart.com. BMX bikes. Did you have one? Would it fly today?
Yes. Well, that's it for this episode of the 10 Years Apart. Thanks for listening, and you can now help us out by helping us decide which decade had the best Saturday morning cartoon. Just head over to our website at 10yearsapart.com or any of our social media at 10 Years Apart Pod and vote right now. Leave us your comments and thoughts below wherever you find this podcast.
Join us again next week when we talk about which decade had the best summer blockbuster movie. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast here on YouTube so you never miss an episode. If you came across this episode and enjoyed it, please hit that like button, subscribe to us here on YouTube for the latest videos, and don't forget to share. Sharing really helps us out.
And once again, find us at 10yearsapart.com or any social media at 10 Years Apart Pod. Stop by, vote, and let us know some of your stories from the 1980s or 1990s.
Remember to like, subscribe, share, and leave us your comments wherever you found this podcast. And thanks again for tuning into the past with us here on 10 Years Apart.
What did you think about that episode of the 10 Years Apart podcast? If you liked it, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this. Vote on which decade you thought was better for this episode in the top right corner or at 10yearsapart.com. And leave us any comments you may have regarding the 1980s or the 1990s. Thanks again, and you can also check out some more videos like these.